All right,
All right,
Robert should be good.
got it.
Yes.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bezerra Spiritual Healing Center's Sunday service with presentation and followed by healing. As you all know, um, Spiritism respects all religions and spiritual traditions. Before I get further into the announcement, I would like to invite our sister Sonia to open us with a prayer. Sonia, are you available? All right. Judy, how would you like to open us up with a prayer?
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity to come together on a Sunday morning to praise your name, to feel your love and feel the love of all of our brothers and sisters here, and sending that love out into the world today. And we are so grateful for the opportunity to have a great discussion about a wonderful topic that will help us remind us always, all week, to remember to follow your teachings and to live in a very heart-centered way. And we would like now to open up the meeting and thank you for your blessings.
So be it. Thank you, Judy. That was lovely. Thank you for speaking from your heart. So, the Bezerra Spiritual Healing Center is a member of the United States, excuse me, got a frog in my voice, United States Spiritist Federation. And the beliefs are around scientific, philosophical, and religious principles of Spiritism. Emmanuel taught that the knowledge and love are the wings for our spiritual evolution. For today's service, there are two parts. First, we'll have Mark Carlos speaking on the topic of time, and I'll introduce Mark shortly. And then we'll have a second part, which will be our virtual passes, followed with a meditation. And I hope you all can stay, because the mentors are working with us from the beginning of the opening of the service all the way through the healing, and they're actually preparing all of us for the healing to receive. So it is very important that we all stay, but we understand that everybody has a busy schedule. There are a lot of things that we need to try to accomplish during the weekends when we're working a full week. So we totally understand, and so do the mentors, but that's what their wish is. They hope that we all stay. So with that said, I'd like to share our link for our announcements to remind everybody of what we're doing throughout the week. So, do you see the schedule? Great.
Yes.
So as you all know, Sunday, we're always between 10 and 11:30 approximately. We have a presentation followed by the healing passes. In the evenings from 5:30 to 6:45, our Sister Sunshine with the Divine Light provides a presentation and open discussion about a chapter in the Workers of Life Eternal. And on Mondays, it's closed, but for the long-term members who have been practicing mediumship will be participating in healing services and education on Monday nights. If you wish to rise to that occasion of joining us, we do have on Wednesdays special classes, Intro to Spiritism, but right now the subject is Inner Transformation. That's from 6:30 to 7:30. We ask that all new members go through the Intro to Spiritism and Inner Transformation before moving on through an invite to the Monday night program. On Tuesdays, Sunshine leads again another presentation with Divine Light, and this book is Light Ahead, and it's from 6:30 to 8 as well. Wednesdays, we have fraternal counseling. Anyone who's in need, be it you're having a hard time or you just need to work through an obstacle that you're facing, we're available. Just put your requests in the chat, and our team of counselors will reach out to you. And that's between 4 and 7 p.m. By the way, all the times that I'm mentioning are Pacific Standard Time. And then on Thursday, we have Psychology of Gratitude, led by our sister Duska, from 6:30 to 7:30. And that as well covers a specific chapter and read and open the floor for discussion of what everybody, what they're getting from that chapter. Just like all the other study sessions. It's for everyone to elevate our understanding of the truth as presented by our mentors through various mediums here on earth. And Monday through Saturday, we have daily prayer, 6 p.m. And it's the same link that for this presentation that we're participating in right now, that you can link to and be a part of the prayer, and you can help set the vibration for a prayer that we speak from the heart, and we speak for all our brothers and sisters wherever they are on the face of the earth, hoping for a more of a divine growth for everyone, and a community effort. I'll get back to up sharing. Hello again, all ya. So I do want to announce that you go to our website, which is under construction, especially for events, you'll see things, a schedule won't pop up. So, but there is a link for donations, and whatever you can provide, you know, it could be just from the heart for participating in these presentations and setting the vibration, or if you wish to keep our center growing, and hopefully eventually we'll have a physical location, donations are always welcome. This isn't a demand. It is, sorry, I have an airplane going over. I think it might be Cal Fire still going on, the mosquito fire. It's just a matter of helping out where you can help out. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our brother, Mark Carlos. So Mark Carlos is an American born and bred, having lived his entire life in California, save 1 year he lived in Hawaii. Raised Catholic, Mark left the church at 16 and was dormant spiritually for almost 30 years. When he became a father, he discovered a power greater than himself, and life has not been the same since. Mark found Spiritism in 2018 and has learned enough to realize he is exactly where he is meant to be. A lifetime musician and technologist, Mark is now, which will be part of his presentation, retired, focused on his spiritual development and still learning how to fly with both wings, aren't we all? Knowledge and charity. So I'd like to welcome Mark on his presentation time.
I trust you can all see that.
Yes.
Okay. So a bit of preamble to the content of today. Quickly, as a 70-year-old man, time is a very interesting perspective for me. I only have a little bit of time left is another way for me to think about it. And certainly, as a spiritist, today you will hear what that means to me and hopefully realize what it means to you. The other aspect of time is that this is the second time I've done this presentation. And it's time for me to truly take this to you as it has been taken to me. And I give you that as a setup, because I'm going to introduce a couple different topics, both scientific and spiritual in nature, and some of which you may never have even thought about before. So time, whenever it begins for you on every day, inside you is this. And we know by looking at a time device, time is passing. And we know that time has been going on this planet and beyond longer than we are here. That's much of what I'm going to talk about today. We live in infinite circles of lives, infinite circles of death. So again, I want to give you all two different perspectives on all this, because time is not constant and forever. Or is it? So we all know there are many different sayings about time. It has a wonderful way of showing us throughout time what really matters. We know that when we give of our time, we ain't going to get it back. And when somebody else gives of their time to us, we better be appreciative of it, because we may never get that time with that individual again. Music is all about time. And I could have done this entire presentation on songs about time or with the word time in it. But I haven't, because this is not about music, even though music does not exist without time. So most of us have been through a formal education and understand this symbol. It's the infinity symbol. What is forever? What do you know to be forever? Before you, during you, and after you. What an interesting concept, huh? See these little yellow things in this infinity symbol? They're going to mean something to you in one way or multiple ways. So here are some examples of what it meant to me. People I've met, places I've been, friends and enemies encountered along the way, sins I've made, contributions I've made. Not just in this lifetime, but in multiple lifetimes, where I've had multiple spouses and mates, where I've had multiple children, where I have encountered multiple spirits. And that's just from today looking backwards. So for me, I asked myself, when did my time begin? Was it 70 years ago? I don't think so. Spiritism has taught me something completely different, which I absolutely believe. So that is a great premise for you to try to grasp what has come to us in spiritual references. Now, before I get to chronology, let me just say this. We have learned in a variety of different spiritist literatures and communications through mediums that there's a time and place for everything. And in the case of humanity, a time to say one thing, one way, and then later on in time, a different way and a different content of what was said. We have many examples of this. If we think about the evolution of man, you're going to see a graph in just a bit that will really illustrate where you and the rest of mankind was at a point in the past, and how the information that you learned during that lifetime was what you could handle. And along in the 1850s comes a revolution, as Allan Kardec takes to print content that the world is still not yet ready for. And if we fast forward to today, what we know is occurring is that literature that previously only existed in one language for one set of people is now being translated for the globe. And the messages are becoming consistent. And humanity is slowly changing. Bear that in mind. Because in the Spirit's book, number 21, has God existed forever, for eternity? Is there a starting point to that infinity system? Only God knows. One thing's for sure, God's never inactive, no matter how far back in time you can imagine when God started. And remember, God started not just on earth. Is it conceptual to think that God was ever idle? Because that's all about what God has done and continues to do. And now we have humans. So think about this, through the evolution of this planet, one can compare the spirits who have come to Earth to the people who live on Earth with diverse origins, and they establish themselves. And they make something of themselves just to exist. They find wood and stone and build a home to protect themselves. And those people have a specific look in their geography, a specific knowledge of their geography, a specific knowledge of what they've been taught and what they figured out on their own. And guess what happens when they move? They come up on other humans with a different set of knowledge. And those kinds of, and a different look, and a different affinity. And all of a sudden they learn to get along. And now we're forming tribes and eventually nations. And all that knowledge gets shared in one form or another. And again, if you fast forward today, what have we learned? How have we evolved? Let's come back to that. So what we know about time is that if we measure it, it's so we can say this happened then and that happened now. Two different things. To us, the reasoning is nothing happens at the same time. How foolish we are. Valdo tells us in Happy Life, take the time for silence. With all this noise going on in the world, with people like me thinking they know what's going on, take the time for silence. Inside, listen more than you speak. Think before expressing your opinion. Walk away from commotion or differences of opinion to preserve your peace of mind. Matters not if you're blue or red, left or right, green or yellow. You don't have to engage in controversy and differences of opinion. You know what? That's the right approach to take for every moment of your life. In other words, at all times. Chico tells us in the book Light Ahead, therefore, don't forget that the good, doing the good, is the perfect credit in the book of eternity. There's the infinity statement. Remember that what happens after will always be the result of what we do now. The law of cause and effect. So any time is a good time to renew the vision of your future. Every moment is a good moment to start doing your best. How many times have our parents or others told us, don't leave for tomorrow what you can do today? And if what you're going to do today is good, do it today. So here's a wonderful definition of time. Time is slow when you wait. Time is fast when you are late. Time is deadly when you are sad. Time is short when you are happy. Time is endless when you are in pain. Time is long when you feel bored. Every time. Time is determined by your feelings and your psychological conditions, not by clocks or any other materiality. It's within you. So wear a smile. Have a nice time. Always. What a great concept. What we know about time, it's like taking a breath. It can change in a heartbeat. Time can take you on a different path and you don't even know you're on it. So now let's get a little scientific. Albert Einstein. He says humans don't understand time. What they understand is the device called a clock, but not what time really is. Time is what we chose to measure. I don't think God necessarily had in mind the words second, minutes, hours, days, etc. But of course he did. We put those labels on things and we built human existence around it. But do we know that time is not constant? Do we know that time doesn't pass at exactly the same intervals? Do we know that time passes slower when we're going faster? What kind of demonstration would we need to explain this? Well, it's conceptual until you get into outer space, because the theory of relativity interesting, challenging concept. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. Our mind can't really wrap ourselves around the concept that we're moving at 67,000 miles per hour around the sun. That's how fast the Earth is rotating in its orbit around the sun. How can we be standing still if we're moving 67,000 miles an hour? This is the theory of relativity. This is why we can prove time does not pass exactly the same. Now, here's another question for you. In Spiritism, in all our literature, we are reminded that there's more to life, and it's called death. So when we think about time, let's not only remember that time is about what we experience during a lifetime, what we can retain and remember in this lifetime. But isn't it interesting to think that there's something that happened before we started this lifetime, and there's something that's going to happen after we end this lifetime. Both of those, we don't have a clue what those are about, except what the spirits have begun to teach us, because the spirits think we're ready to fundamentally change the living portion in order to make the death portion a little better. So again, the history of mankind, the history of Earth is built around the theory of relativity, the concept of time, and the fact that we spirits, and while living, we can call ourselves souls. We have a cycle that we're in the middle of. It's our individual infinite cycle. And it just keeps going on and on and on through each lifetime. We're going to dig a little bit into that. Because Spiritism teaches us that through multiple incarnations, all this journey that we are on transcends all aspects of time. Whoa, wait a minute. Centuries ago? Yep. Decades ago? Yep. Centuries into the future? Yep. Multiple incarnations. We've been there, left, come back, are here now, we'll leave again, and probably come back in one form or another. Each of these lifetimes on Earth is a cumulative process. It contains the knowledges and experiences, thoughts and feelings, and dare I say actions, part of those experiences, from prior lifetimes and from this lifetime. And they're all captured. And cumulatively, we combine all that and progress towards a higher spirit level. Or not. But I think from what I've read and what I believe, we will all go to a higher spirit level eventually. The question is, what can we do to make that time process quicker, easier? Who knows if we even can? This presentation is going to talk about some of those what ifs. Because when we progress, we're not progressing just by ourselves. We have involvements through each of these life cycles. And even when we're not living, we have involvements with spirits who are in their own individual cycles of progress or missions. There to interact with us, support us, challenge us. Now, these 4 bullets, why don't you just take 30 seconds and read each one and replace the word our with the word my, and see if you can personally identify with this. So at this young age of 70, I can tell you that 4 years into my spiritist journey, it is the last bullet that I have realized. Because prior to that, my ego said I was the one who got me here. And now I realize I could not have gotten here by myself. Not in this lifetime, and not in all those lifetimes beforehand. I have other spirits that are contributing to my current result. A few more references from Our Daily Bread. In that spirit of interaction, in that concept of there are other spirits in our lives that make us who we are today, we know that invitations and advice have more effectiveness on us when they are accompanied by examples, good examples, noble examples. Those who display and practice those are the ones we typically want to emulate. You know, the kind of people we used to put up on a pedestal. We know that's now not a smart thing to do, but the point here is that these are individuals we want to be like Mike. We want to be like them because they display goodness with sincerity. They speak from the heart. And other brothers and sisters are paying attention to them and they are being lifted up. And we see that and we love that. That's what happens when we get into a daily testimony of constant practice of doing the good. And that's what today and tomorrow are all about for me. And from Jesus in the home, we need to understand something. We always must maintain mercy and an inner peace within us because everybody's on their own road, at their own pace, at their own point of development. There are, of course, people who are not going to roll with us as easily as others, and we with them. But that's not judging. That's just an obvious need for compassion and understanding. And as we saw in an earlier slide, we don't have to voice the fact that I don't understand why you think like you do or act like you do. I can show compassion and be non-judgmental and just record it. And maybe point out somebody who doesn't do it like them, but not me. Let us also talk about Genesis, because on the topic of time, this is Pove. Time is the succession of things. It's not one point in time. It's all that happens before and after. Time is bound to eternity in the same way as many things are part of forever. I think, in fact, for me, the first time I did this presentation, I asked the audience, just close your eyes for a second as I read this. That's your choice. Suppose yourself at the beginning of the world, that unbelievable moment in time as the Bible describes Genesis, where the earth has no time. It's not even there yet. There is no life. That's the commencement of Genesis, concept only. Why is it shown in any way, shape, or form? No one can tell the beginning because the centuries are not yet in motion. Nothing's living here yet. It's God's concept only. And if you were to put a microphone there, you wouldn't hear a thing because nothing has happened yet. There's no ticking of the clock. There's no heartbeats. There's no nothing. Only silence. And so, in that first hour of a newborn earth, noise, sounds begin to happen. And the concept of the sun rising and setting creates night and morning relative to all those sounds. This is the beginning. Now, here on earth, we don't yet really understand what time means until that moment, but recognize that at that moment, the rest of creation is still marching along. It's just this creation that hasn't been given a timestamp. But on earth, with the beginning, we start this process that we are now a part of. Generations, years, centuries, millennia, documented ways of keeping track of who did what. Okay, we know what was going on at the beginning. It was brand new. What does that really mean? Try to comprehend this reality. The earth is 4.5 billion years old, as scientists would say. Mankind wasn't even around on the earth 2 to 3 billion years. Billion years. No men. Other things. And then humans started. Look how many billions of years passed by before we hit this pretty momentous place of Moses. Now, there's a lot that happens in between there. We can talk about a variety of things historically from a before Christ perspective, but this is an interesting point in time because this is where the spirits say to Moses, it's time to explain to people what's going on. What the heck were people thinking before this? Did we have a person like Moses leading tribes, being visionary, talking with God on top of a mountain, coming down with tablets having been downloaded? Whatever. Really interesting thing to think how many years humans were around before the spirits seem to generally call a pivotal point in time when humans were ready to learn something and be led. And hardly a blip later, Jesus gets born. Compared to billions of years, Jesus is born in 0. And today it's 2,000 years later. My God, humans, that's only 3,000 plus years we've had intelligence going on to try to figure out to get to this point. How much didn't we learn in those 3,000 years? A lot, eh? We're still pretty a barbarian race, aren't we? What an amazing concept to think about. Billions of years. And this little point in time that we tend to reference as the beginning of who we are today. So here's today, and you can start asking yourself, what does that mean to you in terms of time? How many years did you live? Not this lifetime, all the lifetimes. How many years did you not live? What was going on between those lifetimes? So let's do quick math, and then I'll give you an example scenario. And the numbers look like this. You have 86,000 seconds in a day. 86,000 seconds. How much time are you devoting to doing the good? For yourself, for others? 86,000 seconds. Oops, wait a minute. I don't think I want. There we go. So let's assume that somebody in this audience is 25 years old, just as a point of reference. That means they've lived these numbers: 300 months, over 15,000 weeks, 109,000 days, hours, minutes, seconds. Well, there's that B again. Over 1 billion seconds lived in 25 years. So if we go back to that previous thing and think about how long the Earth has been around in years, isn't that amazing? I don't know. Can you grasp that? Here's something else. Try some sample calculation. So let's just take a sample scenario that on average humans live 25 years in each of their incarnate lives. And certainly in the early days of the Earth, that's probably pretty close to accurate. They certainly weren't living to 90 or 100 until much later, because it was not an easy place to live. Food didn't exist. You had to find it every day, and so on and so on. Let's say that on average, alive for 25 years and not alive for 275. And I just picked that number out of nowhere. I don't know why. Thank you, somebody, spirit, for giving me that. But here's what that looks like. Every 300 years, you reincarnate. Okay, where am I going with this? Back to the billions, right? Oh no, maybe just since Moses. Every 300 years, I have an opportunity to progress as a human. The spirit has the cumulative effect. And whatever is happening for the 275 years I'm not living on this earth is part of that process. You know what that means? We could have had 7 million different lifetimes. Excuse me, that's the math. 7 million lives, like this one? Inferior to this one? Let's say it wasn't 7 million. Let's say I only reincarnated 1,000 times to this life. That means I've lived for a total of 25,000 years. The person you see before me is the result of 25 years of experiences. And you know what that also means? I was not around for centuries before each of these lives. Okay, what was going on when I wasn't breathing on this, in this body thing we call humans? 25,000 years of incarnation. How much did I progress compared, if I look at where I am today? Interesting thought. Doesn't that change my perspective of time? Well, it certainly trivializes the 70 years I've spent here on this lifetime. And yet, not so trivial, especially the last 4 years to give me the knowledge I now have. So what did happen before and between each incarnation? Well, one thing's for sure, it happened because time has passed. And inside me, I have this timelessness factor I'm constantly aware of. My body knows that yesterday's gone, I can't change it. Whatever is done is done. And tomorrow doesn't matter either. That's just a concept. I may not even wake up breathing in the morning. So what becomes important? Mindset. Because we've all lived and we've all died multiple times. And now you can begin to think about, there's a reason we know, the spirits have told us this in multiple books, as they have a lot of things. There's a reason we don't enter this lifetime knowing what we did in the past. Knowing when, knowing where. And yet, my generation is all about fantasy. I've had it from the very beginning. My boomer generation has tons of fantasy and tons of innovation and tons of intelligence. And maybe we ran into people we know that helped us along the way or grew us. And we learned things and did things in preparation for the next life. What did we do to progress? The good news is the bad news. We have no clue. We're never going to find that out until it's too late. In other words, we won't know that until this life is over. And then we might get an insight into the prior lives, the prior progress, the prior challenges, etc., etc. Spiritism teaches us throughout these lives, we have intermixed with all kinds of spirits, some discarnated, some not. Is there something common in all of these that persists through our multiple lifetimes? Is there something in you that has been there from the beginning and it continues to evolve? And that one thing is what you know attracts people or pushes them away. Your ego, your money and material wealth, who knows what it is? What's the common thread within you? Compassion, an insane ability to look at somebody and make them feel good. There is a variety of different truths, and here's one of them. Trust the timing of your life. You heard in my bio, there's no question I'm where I'm meant to be, and I've always been where I'm meant to be, no matter how hard the journey, no matter how great the rewards. So I want to give you a sense of what my fantasy and imagination came up with as a possible spirit's journey. He comes around at the time of Moses, and he probably existed before that in 1243 BC. And then he dies. And he comes back and he becomes a servant of the king of Egypt. And the king of Egypt dies. And then he dies. And he comes back. And he's a slave in Rome when Carthage and Rome sign a treaty. He doesn't get freedom, gets just a different experience as a slave. And in 29 AD, not too much time afterwards, he meets John the Baptist, who baptizes him. And now his journey progresses and takes on a very different road. Dies and he comes back, and he is a member of the Council of Arabia representing Catholics. Oh my goodness. Interesting to think about 246 AD, and there was an attempt at peace between Catholics and Islamics. An attempt. Also interesting to think that after he died, he came back as a warrior leader for the Battle of Nineveh as the Crusades are taking place. And he dies in that crusade, and he comes back and he's in the Second Crusade as a slave. And he dies and he comes back again as a slave master on a boat, one of the three, as Columbus finds land. He dies and he comes back as a military leader in the American Revolutionary War. He dies and he comes back a very short time later to die again and come back when the Ku Klux Klan begins. Interesting to think about how humans were involved in all kinds of barbarianism, massive killing, wars, etc. And then we get to this point where we still haven't figured out racial realities. It continues. He dies and he comes back and he goes to Vietnam. Amazing to think that there's a spirit out there might look something like this in their evolution. Or you might look something like this in your evolution. So what we know about time? It has an amazing governance. We are all going to get our own cycles. We are all going to have those infinite elements, those gold dots, because each of us are individual. Our life cycles are completely unique. What we've experienced in the past, what we experience now, who we interact with, etc., it's only for us. Or is it? There's that commonality question, right? Because in the past, those completed cycles led to the interim states in between. All kinds of things that we worked on while not in this human body. In order to come back to this life, which is an in-progress cycle, during which time we have grown and progressed on our own and with the assistance of other spirits. And we know that that's the path we're going to be on from now on. Okay? And now I want to just touch on the intersections of these individual cycles. So at my age, I have all kinds of memories of my schooling, and I think back to kids I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, and even college with that are still close friends today. And the influences they've had on me through all those years, through all their paths, whether we intersected or not. And I didn't even think about what impacts I might have had on them. That's a little prideful, but watch this. This is BSH as I walk through the door. And I cannot exist going forward without incredible appreciation and gratitude to these and every other one, because our cycles interacted and I am the person I am today as a direct result of this. So here we are at a BSH meeting, like the one we're in right now. Like I'm exchanging these energies in an intersection and an interaction. What you do with it is up to you. But certainly this is occurring in time. Think about your life and your cycles. You've met people that you got along with great and then didn't. Because humans grow, ebb and flow, learn new things, outgrow, whatever the case may be. We're constantly changing, aren't we? Our spirit is changing and our humanity is changing. Then you hopefully get these moments in time where we have amazing synchronization. Okay, we can get the romantic element of love and put that into this word because that's certainly the strongest emotion that takes place. But there are plenty of others as well. And these two souls and spirits who know instantly they've met before, they have so much in common. Their energies are so intertwined. There's no question. If they believe it, they know they knew each other in a prior life. They don't know the details. And then over time, things change. And I would just say that when things change, that's a real hard pill to swallow sometimes. It's only in hindsight, after time passes, that we begin to understand we were where we were at exactly the right time. I played in a rock band when I was 22 with a guy who is still one of my closest friends. We made music together. I loved him as a brother. We wrote music together. And we watched each other's lives go completely independent in totally different directions. In common, huh? Because we change all the time. And sometimes I get very narrow-minded and focused in particular technology or in a particular style of music, and he did not. and we don't interact like we used to. And we have differences of opinion and energy differentiation because love ebbs and flows. Respect doesn't have to, but that feeling that was once exactly the same, not a surprise that it changes. And oh, by the way, here comes death. So when two people are in this type of a relationship in total synchronization and death occurs, quite a bit of time goes by for processing and education. And oh, by the way, not just for the living person who remains. And so the individual who remains and the individual who is no longer here continue to evolve, continue to progress, because they all have their own individual, infinite circle of past, present, and future. So, relationships that fall apart. Yeah, maybe now is a little bit easier to grasp it, because over time, things change. Let's introduce free will, because in a relationship that isn't the same as it was previously, and it's not about pointing a finger of blame, but it's more about realizing one person said, I want to do this instead, or I'm going to now do this, and hopefully you'll understand, or whatever the case may be. But if it does result in a disruption of energetics and synchronization, if there isn't understanding, then it can get pretty challenging, vicious even. All because one wants freedom. Freedom to think, freedom to act, freedom from, whatever the case may be. Let's introduce one more thing on that death subject, and that's the free will decision of suicide. And let me interject something. I had not planned on doing anything in this presentation, including suicide. But when BSH decided to make this a part of September, and I was the last speaker in September, I knew this would come. And I wasn't going to fight it, I was just going to let it happen. So my own research into suicide includes an examination of my own feelings, because I had a cousin who committed suicide 2 years ago. And I still haven't processed it all. But here's what I do know, from what I've read and what I feel. There's a quantity of unfinished business for the life that just ended. Now that he's no longer living, he's got unfinished business to take care of. And a whole new set of business as well. And guess what? So do I. I have unfinished business. And I have a new set of business before I pass. Now, what is the meaning of death? And why do humans typically become focused on life and what to do with life and fear death? Spiritism gives us a completely different perspective. That death is just part of the cycle. We're coming back, guys. That's not to say the death process is so easy. It depends on what we've done and where we are in our cycle. But it's part of the process. You can't challenge that any more than you can challenge the ability to take a breath right now. So here's a question for you. Whatever you've done in this lifetime, do you think you're going to have pain and suffering when this lifetime ends? And the answer is, of course, it depends. It's individual. Spiritism is doing a wonderful job of educating humans right now as information gets translated and presented in the native language. And I hear that, and this is not to slam anything of why it is what it is, but I hear that an entire generation of spiritists in Brazil, an entire generation ahead of the knowledge curve, because they've known this. And now their kids know this. And in our case, I know this, and I'm teaching my kids for the first time. And now here's the last question. Whatever we did in this lifetime or in any previous lifetime, even if it includes taking another human's life or our own, it's what happens in between. It's what happens during the times between lives. And comes this question. I don't know that I'll get answered in my lifetime, but hopefully I'll get a perspective on this in a future lifetime. Does time heal all? Can time soften the pain? Can time heal the lack of knowledge? Can time allow you to forgive when you never thought you could? Okay, I'm answering yes to all those questions because that's me in my last, 2 weeks, 2 months, when I started preparing and presenting this presentation. Time has taken on a whole different perspective for me. Yeah, I do think time heals all. Isn't that an amazing concept? What optimism that gives me. And yet, the idea that it could take 1 billion years, okay. Here's some interesting stats I just pulled. In 2019, 10 countries with the highest suicide rates on the left. Look at number 9. 3 years later, I wonder if that's a higher percentage. Look at number 4. 29%. That's 29 suicides out of 100,000 people. And on the right, the lowest suicides. And I expected to see countries with real spiritual consistency or political consistency. And look at what we got. We got some really countries listed here with tons of turmoil over generations. I think number 8, number 9, those of you who are from Brazil, aren't you surprised that this has the lowest suicide rates? Or maybe that's because they are so spiritual. Man, that's just amazing. Anyway, I was gratified to see Americans are not on this list. In spite of the numbers, because percentages are just one thing, you know. Okay. In my short 4 years, these 2 books have a huge impact on Spiritist education. And the book on the left, for a new Spiritist like myself, seeing the movie and then reading the book for the details, you know, and then going back and watching the movie a second time, fabulous. I mean, man, it's all right there. And again, I talked about the optimism. That's what I have. I don't fear death. I'm incredibly optimistic, even if I'm going to have a lot of pain and suffering for the things I've done and not done in this lifetime. I have a lot of optimism about my spirit. So here is this phrase. I have read this more times than I cannot believe, by people who are touring the world spreading the gospel of Spiritism. The spirits have realized the need to instruct us better, to improve our intelligence and increase our understanding of death. More information keeps getting shared all the time. More books going through translation, more movies, etc., explaining what happens when we're not humans. And suicide is one of these topics. And again, for me personally, I'm optimistic. At least 2 young men understand my perspectives, my sons, on suicide, because they were deeply impacted by my cousin's death. They had a wonderful relationship with my cousin Mike. And it is what it is. Just a quick talk on the umbral and a quick talk on this whole topic. I should not be sitting here delivering this message. I've only been studying Spiritism for 4 years. I'm certainly not knowledgeable enough on this topic. So many better speakers can do this. However, I say that knowing that I'm sharing with you what this means to me with a very real experience. And my own research, as small as it may be, to challenge the lifetime of Christian premises of heaven and hell, not a difficult thing to do. To grasp the concept of a lower zone with multiple areas and a zone where those who commit suicide have some very formidable challenges before they come back. One in particular is to not get hung up on the fact that they've created this quagmire that they are now in. They have complicated and probably elongated the amount of time between suicides and between lifetimes because of their suicide. And as I've read, only a small difference between those that are outright suicides versus those that are lifestyles that contributed to death. Not necessarily intent to kill himself, but over time, doing the wrong things in the wrong way. And again, that intertwining of spirits, they're everywhere right now. In this room where I am, they're all over. They're everywhere around us, higher and lower spirits. I was told a 3-to-1 ratio, a 3-to-1 ratio of spirits to every human. So if there are 6 billion on the planet, there's 18 billion spirits. At least one has a direct impact on us. At least one. So a few sayings, as this presentation is full of. What do we make the most of? Wasting time. We see the opportunities. Do we take full advantage of them? Or do we procrastinate? Because in this life, what have you done? Or what haven't you done? Because this is what's going to determine how long and what kind of education you get before the next life, as I understand it. So whatever your journey is, as you might have envisioned it as I did this, this fantasy journey of a sample spirit through multiple incarnations, what might yours look like? Remember, because this is the question that gets asked after every one of those yellow dots. What did you do? What haven't you done that you could have done? I love this reprint. If you could for a moment think about the time wasted and think seriously and calculate the immense mistake you make, you'll see how much this very hour you've spent with me, the minute that has just passed, is it useless or is it fruitful? Because you can't recover it. And could that minute, if you had used it differently and judiciously, would it have helped you in a future life? Do we even think about that? Not all treasures on earth can return to you even if you contributed to. And you had utilized it badly enough that it has to be repaired through your own atonement. Maybe in a painful way. Would that cause you to spend your time more appropriately while you can? No useless vows, no superfluous sorrows about the past. From this point forward, give it a serious thought. It's your future. And remember the intertwining of spirits? You know how many people will be affected by you making that commitment and that change? They'll see it and they'll want it, just like you. You'll be messengers of a sovereign, far from what the human life has become on this planet. It's not about having fun. It's about doing the right thing. Actual work, actual intention for the good. Won't that make it a little bit easier the next time? Won't that allow you to progress faster, more meaningfully? Won't you interact with spirits that are elevated? I think so. Think about it. Have faith, because the cycles will continue and everything will be as it's meant to be. In God's time, not ours. As I wrote to Kiki this week, the sand, how did the soap opera go? Like the sands in the hourglass. These are the times of our lives. That was the opening phrase of a soap opera in the 70s. Ain't that the truth? And there you are, past, present, and future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Mike. Thank you, Mark, for sharing your time with us today in the now. You definitely present the philosophical side of Spiritism to us today. And I can't think about suicides and grasping the understanding that they can always change the time they have. Like any of us, even when we're facing an obstacle, we can change the time. There are times, there's been time in my life when I put on a little weight and I was frustrated with that weight. And just gradually over time, keep working and exercising, eating right, and taking care of my health. I see the weight drop, and I can move better. I can bend over and breathe and tie my shoelaces. And I saw a guy at the gym just it was either, I think it was, it was this morning, or no, yesterday evening. And I could tell he was struggling, but he was exercising. And I didn't think it was my place to say, hey, just keep going at it, keep going at it. You're doing good. But he was taking that time to change, because I could feel, I could sense, with this mediumship, you can hear people. And I could hear this gentleman saying, man, I got to lose this weight. And he was just working out. He didn't have a routine, but he was just trying to work out and break a sweat. But he was taking it upon himself to change his direction in the now, in the time that he has. And we can always do that. And I think that's what your presentation speaks to, is that you always have the time. You always have the now to switch direction, no matter where you're going. If you don't like where you're going, turn left, turn right, maybe back up, or maybe jump over. But we can always change how we feel by how we act in accordance with the time we have now.
Right.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Mark, it's a couple of things that you were talking about when it came to the past life situation. Past lives are nothing to sneeze at. I mean, it takes many resolutions to get to a life, and so much is involved in each life. And regardless, whether or not it's from a suicide or, you lived out a life, And because, you know, you put all these different explanations of what can happen in a life, this is very true. And we're not alone. You know, everybody who you affected in your life, whether they're in a body or out of body, are around you. And everybody is watching, the invisible and the incarnate beings in our family and our friends. Everybody is watching to see what is the next move, even though, you know, they're not sitting there with a magnifying glass, you know, but they're taking notes of how to live a better life. And this is why Jesus wanted us to be the best we can be, with all the virtues and treating others the way we want to be treated, is because we're constantly being watched. And God, in my opinion, is amazing when it comes to teaching us lessons. Because even if our parents don't give us all the answers we need, God allows us the opportunity to come back and get these lessons again. But it is up to us to want to grow with these lessons. It's up to us to want to continue on the path of purity. It can be, like you were saying, it could be fast or it could be slow. But no matter what, we got to keep moving. That's the ultimate case. We have to continue moving. But I also want to say that when it comes to suicide, that is a big topic, and Memoirs of a Suicide is a good book to read if you want to learn about cases. But we have to understand, when people are not generally designed to hurt themselves. So typically they're in pain because of their lives or what's going on around them. And what it all boils down is to lack of education about who we are, why we're here, spirituality. And, you know, when people get stuck on one way of learning, or having to have only one person give them their education, it can be daunting on their life. They can get stuck. You know, when you go to a psychiatrist, are you not learning what they know? You're learning what they know to try and help you. You go to church, are you not learning what they know? Their interpretation of how they read the Bible? It's so on and so on. So the more we open our hearts and our mind towards what's here, the easier it is. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Again, time. That graphic that shows the beginning of the earth, the beginning of humanity, and now these most recent 2,000 years. You know, I cannot get my head wrapped around how many years, and therefore how many cycles a spirit went through over billions of years to progress that slowly to get to 2,000 years ago, when we really started to walk like Jesus. Okay. Well, it's just amazing to comprehend how many times.
Well, you know, they fought Jesus because of pride, and they, you know, a lot of people are intimidated with anyone else having more knowledge than them. Their pride comes out. It's got to be this way or that way. But remember, all of this is material, and the more materialistic you are, the slower your process is. Period. Yeah. You know, and a lot what you brought was about being materialistic. And that's where we are. This is our world. And this is where the spiritism comes in, you know, to educate ourselves about where we're going after this physical body. And that's, you know, it's so amazing to me that we all got to leave, but not a lot of attention is given. Well, where am I going? Well, no, you're not going to sit at no graveyard and wait for Jesus to come flying out the sky. That doesn't happen. The spirit doesn't die. You're continuously moving. And who wants Jesus to resurrect a sick body? You know, thoughts, education is paramount to moving forward. Absolutely paramount. Kiki, you had something you want to say?
No, but I wanted to say something for the generational perspective. I didn't become a father till I was 45. So now I'm the father of grown men as I retire. And it's like there's a 20-year window there where I could have been younger and doing things with them in their young years, but I was too old. and they were too young, or whatever the case may be. And so here we are as adult men, and they're struggling to interact with me at an adult level, and I'm trying to lower myself to be a childlike with them, if you will. And so when I share them this worldly knowledge, I try to do it in a childlike manner, and they get mad at me. No. Tell me what's really going on. So guess what they've begun to do? They've begun to get my Spiritist library. And this week I just spent in LA was all about feeling the energies. And so we went 2 different places where I said to the boys, now, when we get in there, don't say anything. Don't get excited. I just want you to feel the energy and tell me what you feel. And they both said, wow, I never even thought about it before. I'm never even conscious of it. They just go through life. But I can tell you, we walked into this place that they wanted to go. I knew even before we walked in, oh, this does not feel good. This is not good. And I said that to the boys out on the street. I said, tell me what you feel. And so they told me. They were completely unconscious of it. I said, can you ever walk into a public place again, a concert again, a rave party again, and not be conscious of the energies? And they both said no. And what are you going to do when the energies don't feel right? Turn around and walk out. I said, even with your friends there. They both shook their head. They knew what I was talking about. They knew what I was talking about. And all I had to do was show them a couple stories. So, the passing on of the education, Gina, you're absolutely right. And Kiki, your child's going to have an amazing education. But, I do want to stress this, because this is maybe the most important thing I said to them. You know how hard it is for me to tell you guys that I would not be here if it weren't for everybody else on this planet? I didn't do this. You know how many people got me to the point where I met your mom? You know how many people were responsible for teaching me the values that are in you today? I didn't do this. You think I learned this in a class somewhere? And I think they got it. I think they realize there's more out there. There's something else going on. And my youngest said a really good thing for me. And I told him about the planet is changing. And the planet is going to be very different in 2045. And my son said, I wish you were here to see that, because I get what you're saying. I don't know how that's going to happen. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but I totally believe it's going to happen. And they believe because I believe, or he does. And again, that's the optimism.
Where do you think you're going? You're going to come back?
Friends, I'm sorry to interrupt us, but we are way, way, way past time.
Oh, yeah, we are.
As much as I'm loving this conversation, I will ask for us to resume after the service, so then we can keep discussing if that's okay. I'm sorry to interrupt all
That's
of
all
us.
right. This was what happened the first time. It just went.
I know, it's way, way past time.
Time passes, yes.
Mark, thank you very much. A lot of good work. Great presentation. Really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
We ran out of time. Huh.
Okay, well, let's take this time, 5 minutes of time, to take a rest, maybe get some water, take a bathroom break, and we'll come back and we'll start the second half. It is 11:24 Pacific Standard Time, so 11:29 Pacific Standard Time. We'll reconvene. In the meantime, I'll play a little music for us to enjoy, quiet enough to where we can have side conversations if you guys want to talk. So, love you all.